Blog Talk Radio.
I think this situation absolutely requires a really futile and stupid gesture be done on somebody's part. We're just the guys to do it.
Fun has just begun.
All right, welcome back to That Nerd Show, and it's a James Bond show. So, yes, it's all things James Bond, and we've got a lot to talk about with the movie Spectre and James Bond theme songs and all that. But you're going to have to stick around with us to the second half of the show to hear all about that. But we do want to remind listeners that if you want to talk a little Bond with us, you can call in at 347-989-1732. But I'm Marcus Blake, one of your hosts, and with me as always is Brendan.
Hello.
And back again for us for the second week in a row is Alex Moore.
Alex Moore.
This is actually kind of a fun conversation for Alex because it seems like over the last couple of years we keep having these discussions over beer at the pub next door to the Angelica Film Center in Dallas. So now we're going to just carry those conversations over on the air. And we haven't really talked about James Bond since Skyfall, so it's been 3 years, and there's a lot to talk about, including theme songs. And let's just say, Sam Smith, you better listen up, because we got some news for you, buddy. Anyway, but before we get to all that, we got to get to nerd news. There's a lot going on this week. And we're going to kick right off with Star Trek, because it was announced this week that CBS will be doing a new Star Trek TV show, and it will start in January of 2017. That's really about all the details that we know. We don't know if it's going to be before Kirk, after, or anything like that. But Brendan, you had some interesting comments that you put on social media this week. What's your gripe so far? Because I know you got some.
Well, I mean, I'm just hoping, number one, that they don't like Star Trek has never been about the masses, and that's one of my biggest gripes about the movies is they were a little bit too much for the masses, and I understand why they're trying to make money. I get that, but I just hope that on TV it gets back to the roots of Star Wars or Star Trek rather, and that it's more of a cerebral show rather than explosions and Michael Bay, J.J. Abrams popcorn movie fare. I mean, that's not what Star Trek is supposed to be about. So, and I really hope they go back to the Prime Universe because I just don't care about the new universe that they've created. Nothing they've done has made me. I'll go see the movies and they're okay, but I've only seen each movie once. Like I've never gone back and said, God, I got to see that again. So, yeah, I'm just really hoping they go back to the Prime Universe.
Well, here's the thing. This is a recurring theme on our show. We'll continue to talk about it next year as we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. But the heart of Star Trek really belongs in TV. And while I think this is a great thing to have a new TV show, and there's a lot of stories to tell, okay, I'm with you on the alternate universe. It's fine to reboot the original, with the original characters, and you have a good cast and all that, but that's all it needs to be done. Is you've created this alternate universe and you've brought it back, and it's great that you had Leonard Nimoy in it and stuff. But if you want to tell stories from that alternate universe, then create like an online show or something like through Netflix or little segments here and there. Well, this is going to be an
online show. This isn't going to be on CBS. This is going to be on CBS's dedicated streaming service, All Access.
Right. No, and I realize that. But my point is, go to something like Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, and create. You can tell stories in that alternate universe. That's fine, but it doesn't need. But we don't need to keep focusing on that because there is this one timeline of Star Trek, and we've. Between Enterprise to New Generation, I mean, that's about 150 years worth of there. There isn't stuff going on or more, great captains and all that. And like you suggested this week, I mean, you can talk about, after the Battle of Axanar. You can do a Christopher Pike series. There's a lot that you could do.
You could do even before that. You could go even further back and do the Romulan War. Or you could do the period of time between Enterprise and Next Generation, or between the time of the original series, I should say, and Next Generation, and do the Cardassian War, which they never really touched on. They only talk about in the Next Generation. So there's a lot of things they could do. There's tons of different stories they could tell. And, of course, my favorite has always been, I've always loved the idea of Michael Dorn's been trying to get a Captain Worf show off the ground for about 3 years now. And I love that idea because I love the fact that we get to follow a character from lieutenant all the way through to captain.
Right.
So I just think to see Starfleet change through his eyes. So I think that's kind of cool, but I don't think that'll happen. I wish it would, but it ain't.
Well, all I know is there should always be a Star Trek series on TV or some kind of streaming service. We shouldn't have these lulls because there's too many stories to tell in this grand universe, and too many allegorical tales and things that they encounter. So I'm glad.
I think there's a balance to be struck. I don't mind the lull a little bit just because it does make people, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But at the same time, we don't need 3 TV shows going on at the same time. Which we've had on a few occasions.
Right. It is kind of the peak of, or like the heyday of Star Trek. Like, we're going to do all of this, and that's great that they interconnect, and that's fine. But no, let's have one good series. Let's everybody focus on that, and it's time to bring Star Trek back to TV. So this is a good thing. However, you better get some good writers in there, and because you're going to alienate and piss off a lot of hardcore fans that will never let you forget it if you screw this up. You have just like Disney and Star Wars, you have a sacred duty to the fans, to the people that have made this popular. So don't fuck up, CBS.
Yeah, because you can survive a movie where you don't have the hardcore fans because everybody's going to go see it just to go see it, and then the hardcore fans will bitch about it online, and then everybody else will be like, "Oh, I liked it," which is exactly what's happened. But you cannot sustain that over a 22-episode season without the hardcore fans that will be there if you lose them in the first 5 episodes, they're going to be gone forever. And you're not going to be able to get them to come back. So if you lose them, the show is doomed because they're the ones that are going to be the core base. They're the ones that are going to make up your Nielsen ratings or however you're going to, rate this because it's on online streaming, however many hits or streams. They're the ones that are going to watch it 10, 15 times. So, you got to make sure you at least cater to them somewhat.
Well, moving right along, there's some other news going on. So there's been talk about, a Little Mermaid movie, live-action Little Mermaid movie in the works, and apparently it is happening. They have cast their Little Mermaid Ariel. It looks like it's going to be Chloe Moretz from the Kick-Ass movies. So a little other bit of news in regards to this movie. Sofia Coppola was attached to direct it, and left the show mainly because she didn't want to be tied to Chloe Moretz as, being the star, even though the studio has said that this has been their choice all along. So what has she got
against Chloe Moretz, I wonder?
I don't know, but you know what? I think it's Sofia Coppola that probably, it may just be you don't want to deal with big budget stuff. You want to do like indie movies, and that's fine. So, if it's really dealing with a huge project, big budget, I leave. Go off and do the project that you want to do.
If that's the issue, fine. If that's the issue, that's cool. Just say, hey, big budget things aren't my thing. I like to focus. My family's wealth and my uncle's name afford me the opportunity to pick and choose projects I like to work on. I want to go do this stuff. Don't throw the actress under the bus. That's kind of cheesy.
Well, and you know what? It may just be that she doesn't see Chloe Moretz as the Little Mermaid when you get down to the casting process. And to be honest, for people like us at our age, we didn't really grow up with The Little Mermaid. I mean, the only reason I watched it more than once is because I had a little sister that watched it over and over, who's 12 years younger than me, and so I don't really care. I don't see Chloe Moretz as a Little Mermaid. I think I'm too focused on her kicking everybody's ass from the Kick-Ass movies. So I'm kind of like, I need to see her in that role to see if it's going to be good. You know?
Yeah. I guess she might be better as Merida in Brave.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, we'll see what happens. We're going to revert to the Disney the hardcore Disney fans, to tell us whether this is going to be a good thing or not. Because I feel like, you know, we'll freely admit to our audience, if we didn't really grow up with it, maybe we're not the best people to kind of review it and be objective about it, because it's like, you know, we're going into it like, anyway, you know, and then we don't feel like we're going to be surprised by it. The only good thing about the Cinderella movie that I liked was what's-his-face who played the prince, who played, you know, Stark, Robb Stark in Game of Thrones. You know, it was nice to see him clean up and look like a prince and all of that. But the rest of it was like, even though Kate Blanchett was a really good wicked stepmother, but she's pretty much good in anything she does.
The only two I care about them doing is they're already doing the Jungle Book, and then I want to see them do Robin Hood. But other than that,
right.
So I want to see a version of Robin Hood.
Is there really a reason to do another Robin Hood, though? I mean, I feel like there's been so many Robin Hoods, not connected to the Disney film, but just in general. So.
But yeah,
true.
I mean, and they probably will wait to do it for a while, but they'll eventually get around to doing it, and it's going to be a completely different feel. And you know, it's not going to be the Russell Crowe brooding Robin Hood, and it's not going to be the Kevin Costner I can't speak with an English accent Robin Hood either. So,
well, that's why I like Russell Crowe's. He spoke with a clear English accent.
What about
sort
the
of
funny, smart-ass Carrie Elway's role of Robin Hood?
Yeah. That was 20 years ago too, so who cares? I mean, eventually they'll get around to doing it, and it'll be fine because, like I said, it'll have been a while. There's always going to be. I guarantee you go about every 10, 15 years, somebody's doing a Robin Hood movie.
Well, so we'll see what Disney does. The big empire of Disney making live action movies of their animated shows. But you know, if you're talking to Robin Hood, you can't really go wrong with just watching the animated movie from the 70s. It's just that song, Robin Hood and Little John running through the forest. And I'll stop singing.
Right.
Whatever. Still a great movie.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so moving right along. All right, this movie actually intrigues me. I think it's a great thing to do a movie about Mark Felt, the FBI agent who came out and was Deep Throat for Woodward and Bernstein. And the fact that we did not know about it for so long was even better. And the fact that Mark Felt was basically the assistant, director of the FBI, the number 2 guy in charge. So they're doing a movie, a biopic, and Liam Neeson is going to be playing Mark Felt. Personally, I like this. I mean, I can kind of see, as Liam Neeson is getting older, has gray hair and all that. I can definitely see him playing Mark Felt. So nothing against Hal Holbrook from All the President's Men. He did a great job, but we didn't. But anyway, how do you guys feel about a Mark Felt movie, kind of a biopic about Deep Throat?
I think Watergate has given rise to the stupid premise of every scandal after it having to be called something gate, and I really don't care. I think Watergate is responsible for the last 40 years of lazy journalism, and I don't want another story about it.
Okay, even though this really isn't about Watergate in general, it's about kind of his life and his career.
Yeah, I just don't care anymore. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, it might have interested me before, the internet and the advent of the lazy journalist. But now it just doesn't interest me anymore. I don't care. I really don't. And I'm normally a big proponent of history, but this is one of the events in history where I wish the hotel was named Motel 6.
And we've already seen several films about Nixon, so there's kind of the tie-in with that. We had one in the 90s that was popular with Hopkins, and we had one just in the last few years, Frost Nixon.
Yeah.
You can kind of take a pick with what we've had. It's been done to death. There's been documentaries over documentaries. There's even been an ESPN 30 for 30 about how Nixon, sorry, I called him Nixie for a second, Nixon decided to tyrannically decide who was going to be the national championship in college football, just kind of with his own power and wits, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, for those who don't know, Alex is on a close personal relationship with the Nixon family. He doesn't like that getting out, but he calls him Nixie. And they have cognac, smoke cigars, and smoke.
Talk about the good old days. Oh, Lord. Well, anyway, that's what's going on. Another movie for Liam Neeson. He won't actually be killing everybody. He'll just be leaking classified information. Jason Bateman and Diane Lane are also going to be in the film. Jason Bateman is playing Charlie Bates, who's one of Phelps' lieutenants and who actually found out what he was doing. So for those that are interested, that movie is slated to come out in 2017. They'll begin filming in March. But we do like to report biopic movies and stuff, especially with some of our favorite stars. But here is one that I think Brendan can get excited for, okay, with Liam Neeson, just because we like old school spy thrillers. But Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson are teaming up once again, not as Jedis, but they will be in Our Kind of Traitor, based off the John le Carre novel. So there you go.
Yeah, that could be good. I like John le Carre novels. So.
Yeah.
They're not people who want to see a Michael Bay movie, but, that's okay. I don't care about them anyway.
I like the fact that you are actually, kind of bringing, an old school spy thriller, a period piece. Despite Episode 1 being a horrible movie, it's not that Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor didn't have chemistry and weren't cool together in the movie. So I figure this will be a good thing. So, and that's definitely one that we will review and stuff. And I'm like you. I love John le Carre novels. And anytime they make a movie and all that, even if they remake the movie, we've talked about the remake of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy as being pretty damn good for a remake, even though the original...
It helps that the remake was, 30 years apart from the original?
Right. They didn't reboot it 10 years later.
I mean, today in Hollywood, it's one thing if you want to, there's certain things that shouldn't be remade just because of whether there's a, iconic person in the role, like, for example, the Inspector Clouseau movies with Peter Sellers, that shouldn't be remade because you can't duplicate Peter Sellers. Then there's others which are movies that are just iconic and have stood the test of time and don't need to be remade. And then there's Hollywood, which they were like, hey, we made money on this 10 years ago, let's remake it.
Right. And talking about the Pink Panther remakes, I seriously lost respect for Steve Martin for doing those movies. I mean, I've loved Steve Martin in pretty much everything, even when he's gotten a little serious. And I felt so bad and just lost respect. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you think? Go ahead.
I did love the nod to Bond, though, with Clive Owen, where he called himself Agent 008, and Steve Martin called him just one shy of the big time. I thought that was great.
I'm not saying that joke. Yeah.
If there's anything I can take from the film, at least to have that.
Well, there you go. It's what we like to call looking on the bright side. But if we had rated those movies, I'm pretty sure those movies would have been about a 3 or 4. Just for the sheer insult of trying to remake Peter Sellers in the Pink Panther. But, we digress and everything. But, yeah, like I said, we'll get to see Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson in a good old-fashioned spy thriller, later on. So, will be interesting. That one we will look forward to. All right, so we never really talk about Z Nation, which is on the Sci-Fi Channel. We've kind of referred to Z Nation as the bastard child of The Walking Dead, and of course they put it on Sci-Fi and stuff. But it is actually a decent show. I mean, it doesn't get the ratings and the viewership as The Walking Dead, but it's has done well enough to get itself a third season on Sci-Fi. I don't know whether this is really because the show is that good, or there just isn't anything else on the Sci-Fi Channel worthy, to put in its place. But anyway, Z Nation will be coming back for a third season. So you'll have to let us, fans, you'll have to let us know if you're excited by that, or if it's in the category of, we don't really care. So, and I think that's kind of sad about the Sci-Fi Channel. I mean, it's always hit and miss with their series. Sometimes it's, kind of interesting and all that, and it grabs you and then, gets old. I think we all stopped watching Defiance, didn't we?
Yeah, I haven't watched it since season 2.
Yeah, I'm kind of like me. It was just like, I don't really care. And then it got axed, and Dark Matter is probably the most promising series that they have on there right now, and fans can binge watch that on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes next season.
Yeah, Killjoys didn't really do anything for me, but we'll see what other stuff they can get. But anyway, all right. This goes into our category of sometimes Nicolas Cage makes a good movie, sometimes he doesn't, because he's all over the place. It's very hit and miss with Nicolas Cage sometimes. But every once in a while he surprises us. Like Frozen Ground, I thought was a pretty good movie for what it was, and didn't really get much press and everything, but he was pretty good at it along with John Cusack. But anyway, Nicolas Cage is going to be starring in a Navy movie. The USS, he's the USS Indianapolis Men of Courage is what it's titled, and it's actually going to be directed by.
Why he's gonna screw up the mission of the Shark? Oh, that's such an incredible Survivor story, and I'm going to have to look at Nicolas Cage make that stupid surprise face when the ship gets torpedoed. Damn.
Well, it should also be noted that it's actually being directed by Mario Van Peebles, and you've got James Remar in it, Tom Sizemore, and Thomas Jane. But I thought this was actually pretty funny, and I think this is actually going to be the best part of the movie. The ComingSoon.net article about the movie release, this was their subline after the title. 1,100 men went in the water, 316 men came out, the Sharks took the rest, June the 29th, 1945. I'm like...
They took the line from Jaws?
Yes, to advertise the movie.
So not only is this a remake, but they put Nicolas Cage as the captain, and then they plagiarized.
This could actually very well be our This Week's Side of the Apocalypse, but it isn't. It's very close.
No,
but I mean,
look, there's a saying in the Navy: once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. That's 3 strikes, right. You're out. That's enemy action. We don't want this movie being made. Oh my God!
Didn't they already have? They already had a version of the movie back in the 90s, right? They made a movie with Rob Lowe, right?
And Stacy Keach played the commander of the Indianapolis.
Okay.
Mission of the Shock, the saga of the USS Indianapolis is from 1991. Stacy Keach was the captain. And basically it showed, David Caruso was actually in it. Kari Haruki Tagawa, who's been, if you have a Japanese character in any film in the last 40 years, he's probably been in it.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of people. Dale Dye, who is the military advisor to everyone, he was in it. So, yeah, there's a ton of people in it, but it did a very good job of showing the aftermath of the movie and how the Navy just railroaded this captain. Captain, Charles McVeigh, actually commits suicide many years later because he couldn't live with the guilt of not going down with his ship.
It's an incredible story. It is, okay? And, very, very incredible story about survival. It's a great naval story and all that, but if literally your marketing line is stealing a line from Jaws, then you've pretty much told the best part about your movie, and there's no reason to see it. In fact, I feel like we should just all go watch Robert Shaw in Jaws make his little speech telling the story in Jaws, and that's it. That's all we need to know. We're done. In fact, you know what? We're probably not going to see this movie. We're going to review that scene from Jaws in place of the movie. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Although I didn't know this, I was just looking it up. This is actually kind of cool, and kudos to then President Clinton and the Congress. They actually exonerated him posthumously because even the Japanese submarine captain testified in his thing. It wouldn't have mattered if he was zigzagging. They had him dead to rights.
Right.
So,
well,
but, Nicolas Cage really, god damn. All right, we got to talk about something else because I'll just. I'm gonna lament.
No, we will. All right, we're
this over scotch.
Drink some more scotch. It'll be okay, Brendan. It'll be all right. All right, so getting back to games and making movies off games, apparently there's going to be a Witcher movie set for 2017. I haven't played The Witcher yet. I have a copy of it. I just haven't put it in. But, Brendan, you've been playing The Witcher. You like the game. Do you think making a movie is a good idea?
I'll tell you my answer to that after I see Fassbender's Assassin's Creed. How's that?
Okay. All right.
Because most video game movies have pretty much sucked. There have been some few exceptions, and those were only okay. But it lends itself to be a good story. I just don't. I mean, I don't know who you get. You got to get somebody who looks kind of older, the white hair. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, they're starting with a movie, and it's also expected to start a television franchise. So that's their plans. But I think, well, here's the main thing. If you have to find the right character, and you have to find someone that's willing to cross over and be in the TV series. You can't recast and do all that. Yeah. You have to do it from start to finish with who your cast is and all of that. Now, I mean, I don't know where you would put it. Actually, you could probably put it on FX to replace the Bastard Executioner, which has just gone off the rails and really boring. And I'm very sad that Kurt Sutter put that out because that show is like horrible. But there you go. You can. I mean, this actually sounds better than the Bastard Executioner. So, but anyway, that is happening. Activision and Blizzard Studios will be launching, and they're getting ready to make a Skylanders Academy TV series and a Call of Duty feature film. That was announced this week. So I don't really know how to feel about that. I feel like
it sounds like a money grab to me.
Yeah, and it sounds like a money grab that's about 5 years too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where. I mean, what kind of Call of Duty story are you going to tell? I mean, are you going to make Call of Duty Ghosts into a movie? I mean, because that's really the only one that I could see, or maybe
no, they're not
going to.
They're not going to touch anything. They're not going to touch anything with Ghosts ever again because it was the worst reviewed Call of Duty ever. Nobody plays it anymore. The resale value for Black Ops and Black Ops 2 for previous generation is higher than Ghost on PS4 and Xbox One. So,
right.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything with Ghost. But I don't know. We'll have to see what Activision and Blizzard. Let's see how this Warcraft movie turns out. I was pleasantly surprised by the look of the trailer that came out the other day. But we'll see. I mean, they got Ragnar Lothbrok in it, and they've got Tony Stark's dad. So,
Dominic Cooper.
They got a good start. Yeah. So we'll see where it goes from that. So
it looked, trailers are supposed to basically sell the movie to an audience to make you want to go and see it. Some movies, just by the title, automatically sell themselves. It's like James Bond, which we're talking about today. All you got to do is say you're doing a new James Bond film, and we're going to go see it, regardless of it being horrible.
Right.
Because we did go to the theater to see Quantum of Solace, just to be fair. Star Wars, another great example. However, if the trailer does well enough, which it did with Warcraft, I mean, I'm not one of. I've never been one of those that got sucked into playing the games over and over and stuff. But I'm excited. I mean, it's something that I am kind of looking forward to.
One decision that I know that, and they had to fire the first director over this, is the first director, who I believe was Sam Raimi, really wanted to make the orcs the bad guys. And they said, no, it doesn't work like that, because that's not how it is. These are two peoples who both see themselves as correct and are both striving for their race's salvation and for their race to survive and thrive. So it's a much more balanced approach, where it kind of reminds me a lot of Tora, where they filmed the lead-up and events of Pearl Harbor from both sides. They filmed the Japanese side, they filmed the American side, and they spliced the two movies together. And it was very fair and balanced. It wasn't like previous American World War II movies where we made them out to be those evil Japanese people. So, I kind of like that, where they're going with that. So hopefully that good idea comes to fruition on the screen. Right.
Well, the next bit of news is talking about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. The plot details were released this week, and I'm sure everybody knows by now that Eddie Reynon, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is the main character. Yeah, is the main character. But anyway, this is what the plot is. He is Newt Scamander. He's coming to New York City in 1926 from England. They can't disclose the reasons, but he's got a trustworthy weathered case, a magical bag that is bigger on the inside and houses habitats for a number of magical creatures. In his travels, he discovers that the American wizards are quite fearful of being outed to the public, who they call nomage instead of muggles. And it's in this wizard-phobic world that something happens, causing Newt's bag to burst open, setting free the magical monsters. So looks like it's a period piece, set, 50, 60 years, than Harry Potter. Because I think the books of Harry Potter, he was actually born in the early 80s, and they go to school in the early 90s. But anyway, New York, 1926, and that's what happens. So it kind of seems like a theme of... Although it would make sense that the Americans were more xenophobic about witches. I mean, the whole Salem witch trial thing. Sure. Not really the finest hours when it comes to American history. Well, we really the colonials. Yeah. But anyway, This is the basic plot to it, and I haven't read anything outside the books, so I don't really know what to make of this. Harry Potter fans out there, I mean, does this sound exciting to you guys? Well, I know from my wife's point of view, my wife is thrilled because she's read the short stories about Newt Scamander. So, but I mean, to me, hey, it's fantasy. It's something different. I'll go take a look at it. Well, we're nerds. We are going to review it for our audience, but I'm sure there's a lot of great, wonderful stories outside of Harry Potter. But I guess my main question is this something that should be made? Because there's a lot of things that really shouldn't be made. So I don't know. What do you think, Alec? I guess that's going to be a question. Go ahead, Alec.
Sorry? Yes. I've never been a huge Harry Potter fan, so I'm not sure how much I could lend to that. I mean, I've kept my eye on it, since college, basically. But personally, I feel like anything is worth looking into as a viable option. Obviously, the dedicated fans would have a better opinion on this as far as whether they think it's okay to do this or not. But right. I think for me, the way I've always looked at it as a fan, when you're a fan of anything, is you're always curious when you see something, even if it may not be, if it's a little coloring outside the lines a little bit, you still are going to take a look at it before you at least say no and just not be so stubborn, I guess.
Well, I think it's interesting
go ahead.
I think it's interesting to be set in, New York during the 20s. So you're going to get a lot of fantastic cinematography and all that, especially within a wizarding world. And Eddie Redmayne, he's a great actor. So, but yeah, we haven't really read the short stories and stuff like that. So we're probably not the best to have an opinion on this yet. All I can tell our audience is we will review it and we'll be objective about it. Compared to the Harry Potter movies, which that world really centers on that one character and his 7 years at school and living up to his destiny. It's not like that kind of world doesn't have other rich characters, but at the same time, how will this work?
Honestly, I hope it does really well, because I liken this a lot to Star Wars and what they're doing with their anthology films, and they are taking a bigger risk and going farther outside the main Harry Potter saga than Star Wars is currently doing with the anthology films. So I want this to be really good, and I want it to do extremely well, so that the people, Kathleen Kennedy and the folks at Lucasfilm and at Disney will take greater risks with those anthology stories, and maybe we do get that Knights of the Old Republic movie.
Sure.
That would be really awesome. So I'm rooting for this movie to do well because of that.
Right. Well, we will we'll see what happens. Like I said, it does sound interesting, and we will be there to review it. But anyway, one quick casting news. Rogue One's Riz Ahmed will be in the Bourne Identity 5. He'll be playing a CIA tech specialist opposite leading man Matt Damon. Or, as you should probably call him, I guess he'll be playing Jason Bourne's Q. So, there you go. But we're more excited to see him in Rogue One.
Yes.
Anyway. Okay, this is the last bit of casting news, and then we're going to get to gaming news real quick. But apparently, it had been in the works about doing the sequels to the Dragon, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American version of the David Fincher one with Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara. So apparently they're not going to actually do that anymore. Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara are not going to be in any more films from the Millennium Saga series, whatever it is. They're actually jumping ahead to book 4 in that series of The Girl in the Spider's Nest. So that movie is actually in the works. No word yet of David Fincher's coming back to direct that. I like both versions personally, the foreign and the American version. I thought the Daniel Craig version, even though he's basically a Swede with an English accent, but still, it was a very good cast and a very dark movie. And there's one scene in particular that I had to walk out and go to the restroom. I just could not watch it on screen, but and I'm sure everybody knows what scene I'm talking about. Anyway. I think you would do yourself a disservice, Sony, if you didn't bring David Fincher back to do this, because he kind of has set the tone for this kind of series. So that's, and I don't know much about The Girl in the Spider's Nest. I never read the book, but apparently they're going to make a movie over it. So there you go. All right, I'm going to let Brendan handle some gaming news for you guys real quick. We do have some big games coming out, but before he goes tells you about games, and I go to the restroom because I can. Check out our site. We'll be having reviews for Need for Speed by Sheila Moore, and we'll be having our review of Fallout 4 tomorrow. So keep up to date with what's going on. And Tuesday, we're going to start playing Fallout 4 and let you know more about it next week before we all get sucked into Battlefront. But anyway, Brendan, handle gaming news for a little while.
Sure. So just do a quick rundown of what's coming out in the next couple weeks. Obviously, it's just stated we got Star Wars Battlefront coming out November 17th. Fallout 4 comes out Tuesday, November 10th. Assassin's Creed Syndicate I guess that's going to be on the other systems because it's already out. they're saying November 19th, but I thought it was already out for the Xbox One and this is PC. Okay. I'm thinking to myself, it was already out. What the hell? Rise of the Tomb Raider is coming out November 10th. Xenoblade Chronicles X December 4th. StarCraft 2 Expansion Legacy of the Void Tuesday, November 10th. Just Cause 3 November 1st. So there's a ton coming out. There's a ton that just came out. Obviously, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 just came out. It's getting very good reviews. Halo 5 Guardians is getting good reviews. It just came out. Divinity Original Sin looks like a pretty cool action-adventure game. WWE 2K16, and for you guys who like portable games, Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes just came out as well. Interesting gaming news, one little quick bit. I mean, there's not too much other than the games that are coming out and have come out, but the big thing I saw over the weekend was BioWare released a little teaser trailer for Mass Effect Andromeda, and it was narrated by Jennifer Hale, who was female Commander Shepard in the original Mass Effect trilogy. And it was basically Commander Shepard saying goodbye, and you get a first glimpse of the new ship that you're going to be in, and it's as you're in the void between the Milky Way galaxy, and it pans away from the Milky Way galaxy, and then you see the ship, and then you see the Andromeda galaxy. So it's going to be very interesting to see have them explore a whole new galaxy of planets. I'm very much looking forward to that. But that's kind of just about it for gaming news. I mean, there's not a lot of big breaking stories, just that there's a ton of games coming out, and that, there's not any big game announcements right now. So as those come out, I will certainly put them up. But for right now, just that's about it.
Well, one last thing of gaming news. Amy Pascal will be producing a movie about Zoe Quinn. It's a Zoe Quinn memoir of I guess it's Crash Override: How to Save the Internet from Itself to be made into How to Save the Internet from Itself to be made into a movie, and it will be Zoe Quinn will be starring Scarlett Johansson. The movie deal was based on a proposal titled Control-Alt-Delete and tells the story of how Quinn, the creator of such hip interactive games as Depression Quest, was targeted by a digital mob bent on upending her life with a blog post by her ex-boyfriend. When it went viral, it sparked the widely discussed and yes, we have to use this word, Brendan, GameGate controversy, and took a surprising turn when instead of running, she decided to fight back. It's a very inside look at the gaming and nerd culture and what happens when it gets caught in the gears of, that machine. Prime example of, there's no middle ground with nerds. Either you really hate something or you really love something, and nerd rage can be some of the worst rage out there. But
there's also that's all fueled by internet troll. You know what I mean? That's the greater that's a prime example of the greater internet fuckwad theory. You've got a normal person, you give them an opinion and an audience and anonymity, and they become a total and complete fuckwad. So.
Right. Well, anyway, they'll be making a biopic about her. It should be an interesting movie, and Scarlett Johansson will be playing Zoe Quinn. But I think it is a great allegorical tale in regards to gaming and the internet and what Brendan was talking about. And we face those kind of things with social media all the time. Some days I think it's just a very important lesson that some days, no matter how mad you are, just keep your fucking mouth shut. It's not worth it. Go out and play some video games or something. So, no timetable when this. Oh, go ahead.
This is why more states need to follow Colorado and Washington's role and start taxing pot, because then people, if you're high, you can't rage on the internet.
Nice.
I throw it out there. I don't even smoke, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, moving on to movie reviews. Like I said earlier, we're going to get to our Spectre review at the first part of the second segment. We talk about James Bond. But we wanted to talk about the Peanuts movie. We had a chance to do a screening last Sunday. Still not a huge fan of 3D, but we did see it in 3D, and there's been a lot of talk about whether this movie would be a complete disaster, or whether you should make a movie based off the comic strip. Here's what I have to say about it. I think it's great that we've done a movie, about Peanuts. That you've done it with the animation technology that we have today. It was a beautiful movie. It was a fun movie. We have all grown up on, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin and Charlie Brown's Christmas. I think those are staples of our childhood, and we love to introduce those older animated movies to kids and then, a newer generation. So I don't buy into the theory personally that this movie shouldn't have been made or that it was actually going to be bad. I didn't really expect it to, be great, because I think there's just a certain magic about a comic strip that you can't capture on film, no matter how much you try and how great the technology is. There's just a purity and an innocence about the strip itself, and its in just simple black and white squares, getting right to the point. But the movie was actually very good, and I do give it a good 8 out of 10. I think it's worth seeing. And for those, of our generation, Peanuts is really of our parents' generation. I was kind of talking about this with my mother the other day. Peanuts came out the year she was born, and, her and my father, grew up with it. And of course, I was introduced to Peanuts growing up. But it's really the comic strip of that generation, kind of a baby boomer generation. So you're talking about two generations that are now growing up with Peanuts. And I think it's great to kind of introduce it, but we do live in the day and age where animated films and that media, or that medium is the best way to do it. Doesn't take away from the magic of the strip, but it was a great story to hit all the right notes about Peanuts, from Charlie Brown and being too scared to talk to the little girl with red hair, and Snoopy fighting the Red Baron, and Linus in his blanket, and the kid that plays Beethoven, and Lucy, and it's a fun movie. So if you've got kids, I do definitely recommend take them to the theater and see this. If they've never seen Peanuts before, if this is the best way to introduce them, then introduce them to the comic strip, do it. It's worth it. It's worth paying those tickets and getting bundles of popcorn and all of that. However, with the screening we saw, I think more grown-ups laughed than the kids did, which is not an indictment on the movie itself. I think there was a lot of young kids that, it was like, hey, this is great, but we don't really know the backstory yet. And maybe that's where you have to go in and read the comic, the comic strip. So, but it's definitely a fun movie, and probably the best thing in my mind that they did was there's a moment in the movie where Charlie Brown is running through all the clumsy things he's done and embarrassed himself, and in true comic strip fanfare, they have the little dialogue box go outside of his brain while he's sweating and there's action and all that, and they make the actual strip itself that Charles Schultz drew come to life. So it's the black and white strip of all those moments in his head in a little white box. And I thought that was the most beautiful and perfect tribute to Schultz. And of course, the very end, when they do this big group photo of all the cast, and it's basically a comic strip, and they write Schultz's name and stuff. So the movie's probably more nostalgic than anything else, but it is a good movie and worth seeing. And I look forward to being able to take my niece and nephew to go see it and enjoy that. So, but I don't know how I would feel if they ever made a Calvin Hobbes animated movie. I almost feel like that would kind of be sacrilegious and just leave the strip alone, But anyway, that's our review of the Peanuts movie. It's a good 8 out of 10, and it's worth seeing if you've got nieces, nephews, kids, or you just want to go see it yourself because you grew up with Peanuts. And nothing beats Snoopy fighting the Red Baron and, flirting with Fifi. So, anyway. All right, moving right along. we were talking about this before the show, so this is a good segue into our last little segment before we get to James Bond. We will be doing a little stuff about Star Wars for the next few weeks leading up to the movie. But this week's Sign of the Apocalypse, we're calling you out, Disney. I do not understand why you're scaling back the whole Princess Leia slave outfit deal. That's part of Star Wars for many reasons. I know you're family friendly and yada yada yada, and you don't want to seem like you're promoting, fetishes and S&M and stuff like that. But for every guy who grew up, loving Slave Leia, the best costume she wore in the original trilogy, how dare you? How dare you scale that back? You'll never replace my memories, but you should be ashamed of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. So I heard that this past week, and I'm just like, so we're going to phase this out? Like, you're going to completely try to erase it? I mean, I understand if you don't...
I'd like to point something out here, too. This is a complete overreaction by people. Like, somebody saw this with their kids and was like, oh, I don't know why they have a chain around her neck and why she's in this bikini, and I didn't have an answer for my daughters. Well, why don't you try watching the movie? Because if you know, then you know what that chain represents. She broke those chains. She got out of the slavery. She conquered her slave master. And, it's a metaphor to girls out there that you don't have to take shit from pigs.
Right.
You can stand up to them. You can, overcome it. And I just think that they're taking all the wrong lessons out of this, and they're just focusing on the fact that it's a bikini rather than the fact that, what the message of the story was. I mean, come on. We've been selling Barbie to our daughters for 60 years, and if Barbie was a real person, she'd have a 66F chest and a 12-inch waist. So, I mean, who gives a shit? Yeah, but Barbie's okay, completely unattainable frickin', dimensions that we teach our little girls that they have to live up to. But Slave Leia, that's a step too far.
And that's something sacred in the nerd world, so how dare you touch that? So, you were saying, Alex?
I think it's just another bad example of political posturing, and to the effect of what you were saying, what Disney's position was on this, I think it's completely hypocritical. If you go back to the history of Disney and all the things that have slipped through the cracks, so to speak, in their animated films throughout the years, the bare chest in the background of Rescuers Down Under, or the erection on the priest who's marrying the couple in The Little Mermaid, or one of the characters flipping another one off in DuckTales the movie, and so on. I mean, they're just all throughout the history of Disney, and nobody is safe from it. They act like it's something that they've tried to get away from, but now they kind of just ignore like it never happened. It's the same thing with history. Even if it's wrong or if it's controversial, let's suppose we even take the stance that it was wrong to depict Leia in that way. You can't just pretend that it didn't exist by erasing it. It's just a part of the history, and it's something to look at and to learn from, but to also just remember that this was real and it was there.
Well, I understand if you're not in favor of the blow-up doll sex toy Slave Leia that was invented years later. I get that. However, I love that Carrie Fisher made fun of it in her little one-woman show for HBO, Wishful Drinking, as they inflated it on stage, talking about how she had to sell her likeness to George Lucas. Okay? But, you are taking this just a step too far. Little boys got excited by seeing Slave Leia. When they hit puberty, they got more excited. How is this any different than Daisy Duke and stuff? I mean, are we? That's another thing. Let's start some controversy on that one.
It's just people. They just want to be offended. Like and I don't. It's this. I am offended, so everybody else has to, deal with my offensive. Hey, who cares? You're offended. Okay, be offended. Congratulations. You know what, though? We live in a free country. And as long as whatever it is does not break the law, and as long as people will buy it, that's called a free market. So piss off.
And if enough people
Brendan,
have a problem with it, then it just won't sell. So there you go.
Right.
And Brendan, you said something perfect before the show in talking about this issue. That is not about degrading Princess Leia. It's also about her breaking the chain and gaining her freedom and also striking back. It's showing the power of a strong-willed woman and a warrior, okay? And that's what
she didn't need Luke to save her. She was saving Han. That's what she was there to do. She saved herself.
And as we get into a movie where the girl is clearly the main hero, okay, and it's about her discovering her destiny and learning to be a warrior and all that, you're just sending the wrong message. You should be able to send the message to every young woman out there that you have power, that you can do things the same as a man, if not better. There are plenty of women out there that are a lot better at things than I am, and I applaud them for that. There's also some women out there that can kick all three of our asses, and we know some of those women, and I'm like, I'm just turned on.
Some would be okay with it too. So
yeah,
but at the same time, I even hesitate getting into that because, look, there are definitely women that can do things better than me. I am not the greatest athlete in the world. Anybody who has seen a picture of me can understand why. Look, but there are things that women and men do inherently differently because we are inherently different.
Right.
But that also means there is shit that men cannot do that women can do exceptionally well. You know, and I'm not talking about old sexist shit either, so don't even go there. But I'm not saying you guys will. I'm just saying men and women are wired differently, and because of that, we have different strengths and weaknesses. And men certainly have our own weaknesses. We could go, Marcus and I could go all day long about our weaknesses, but that's another story for another time. They usually end up in crazy places. But the point is, you don't. I think everybody gets caught up in the G.I. Jane syndrome. Women have to do everything men do and have to do it better. Well, no, you don't. That's the thing. You're women, and that's a fantastic thing. You're a woman. That's a fantastic thing. You're half of the human race. It's yin and yang. Without you, we don't exist. So I just think people get too caught up in I can do it, they can do it, or you can do it. You know what? Why don't you just be your damn self and be happy about it?
Well, but like I said, we are calling Disney out for going a step too far with this, and just you have time, walk it back. It's just don't be morons about it. But with that said, we've had a Japanese Star Wars trailer drop this week, and we've had the first of the TV spots, and of course we're getting to see some new scenes, and everybody's dissecting everything. I got to tell you, the Japanese trailer in a lot of ways was very, very cool, and being able to get to see some different scenes with Rey and Finn and whatnot. But the TV spot they dropped today, where they're basically on a planet or a snow planet, an ice planet. The question of the day on the internet has been: are they going back to Hoth? Is this where the Starkiller base is?
Nope. I'm going to call that right now, because everybody thought the desert planet was Jakku, or everybody thought Jakku was Tatooine when they first saw that picture, and it's not. And I saw a lot of, what I saw on Hoth? I saw a lot of snow and a lot of mountains. I didn't see any forests. There's trees all over that place.
I'm going to go ahead and just say that we'll find out in a few weeks. Okay.
Yes.
Everybody cool their horses.
Yes.
Now, there's a part of me that kind of wants to see another Tauntaun and Han slicing it open. I thought they smelled bad on the outside. But anyway, all I have to say is with the new TV spots and showing some different scenes, it's just making me even more excited, and I can't wait. I can't believe that we're essentially 5 weeks away here from Star Wars. It seems like it's been a long journey since we first started talking about this a few years ago, but we're getting close. So, I can't wait to see Daisy Ridley playing Rey. I think she's going to kick some butt and everything. Talking about someone that I think is going to empower women out there, and be a great example and stuff. So hopefully, as an actress, she takes this seriously and doesn't screw up in life and embarrasses herself, but realizes what an example she should be to the fan base. But anyway, are you guys even more excited about Star Wars now after seeing all this? That's a rhetorical question, by the way.
Go ahead.
Well, I have to say, when I went to see the Bond film and they just happened to, show the trailer, I thought, man, this is quite a night to see a Star Wars trailer and a James Bond movie in the same night. And I was literally feeling the hairs on my neck and on my arms move up. It was just a very intense kind of emotional moment for a few seconds.
Right. Well, like I said, 5 weeks away. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk some James Bond. So if everybody needs to run and get another beer, another martini, do that. We'll be back in about 40 seconds. So here we go.
Just because you have a business doesn't mean you have the roadmap to success. In fact, 80% of businesses will fail. But there is one important thing you can do to help ensure that your business is not one of them. Go Pro. For all of your printing needs, your web and graphic design, and your advertising, there is only one place to shop, the Business Pro Shop. Go Pro with your business today and start with 500 free business cards with your first order. Call 888-901-4665 to Go Pro.
All right, and we are back, and we are talking a little bit about 007. So we're going to start right off with the movie Spectre and telling you what we thought about it. We were talking about this before the show, and we're kind of all in agreement. It's a good movie, but not great. But still a lot of fun to see it in the theater. For me personally, out of all the Daniel Craig movies, I put it as I think Skyfall is definitely the best. Casino Royale is second best, and then Spectre, and then Quantum of Solace is the worst. But I liked it. I personally give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good movie. I will see it again. But the movie does have some issues, and we're going to get into that. We're going to start with you, Alex. Tell us your thoughts about Spectre.
Well, one thing that stood out to me was I liked the fact, of course, that we did see a new tradition that really had not been used during the Daniel Craig era that I thought had been missing for the last couple of years, and that was to see the gun barrel sequence at the beginning of the movie where it belongs.
Right.
So that got me off to a really great start. I actually did a fist pump right in the middle of the theater, and I don't think I saw anybody else in the theater do it, but there you go. But I gave the song a listen to before I saw it in the movie. I didn't care much for it, and seeing it in the movie didn't really help the cause either. But I liked all the subtle little homages they gave to a lot of the old Bond films. But I thought, unlike The End of the Day, they did it in a way that didn't seem like it was being forced or like it was too obvious. I thought they did it in a very seamless way that fit into what was, I thought, actually a pretty decent story for the film, which had been lacking from some of the other films where they were really trying to, pay homage to the other classics. So I wasn't sure how I felt about them bringing back a villain who had actually died, long time ago. The official last appearance was back in For Your Eyes Only, but
right.
Basically from there I felt like, you know what, maybe we just need to hit the reset button from Casino Royale, because now they've officially brought back a character who was dead. So Brendan, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that they hit the reset button with Casino Royale because, that was Casino Royale was about him getting his 00 license. You have to have 2 kills, and the first one was difficult, but the second one was easier. Yes, absolutely. As he shoots him in the head before he can finish the sentence. But I really like. There are things about the movie I really, really enjoyed, and things about it not that I didn't like, that I just wish they had done more. And specifically, I think they could have cut down on the globetrotting a little bit, because they went from Mexico to England to Italy to Austria to North Africa back to England. And like a side trip to Tokyo in there as well for Moriarty. I mean, whatever his character's name was. But
I think for the movie we're calling him C.
Oh yeah, C. Yeah. Anyway, I think I know what Bond thought that stood for. Can't understand normal thinking. Anyway, anyway, so, you know, I think they could have cut down on the globetrotting a little bit in order to increase some of the character development. Because, you know, I heard an article before the movie, or I read an article before the movie with Dave Bautista, and he was talking about how he wanted Hanks to be kind of like an anti-Bond, to where he's the very much dapper and professional and debonair, but a cold-hearted killer with no moral code or compass. And that, like, none of that came through in the movie because he was just this big, silent, lumbering hulk of meat. He was more Jaws than anything else, except you could have called him Nails because of those metal thumbnails that he jammed in the dude's eyes.
Right.
He had one frigging word in the whole movie: shoot or shit or whatever it was. And my only thought was that was it. And then the other thing is, I thought, you know, you've got a character or an actor the caliber of Christoph Waltz. You know, he's twice Academy Award winner in the past 5 years. Could you give him some meat to chew on? Just think outside of that one torture scene with the needles, and they didn't give him anything to work with. So I think those two, you know, if they had really kind of taken a page out of Stephen DeKnight's book, who ran season 1 of Daredevil, and really given a chance to develop his villains, it would have been a much more well-rounded movie. The action was still good. The Bond girls were amazing. I was a little disappointed Monica Bellucci was only a cameo because, my God, I don't care. That woman's 50 years old. She's amazing. And she is. She's a heavenly creature. That's all I can say. And, you know, but it was a good, entertaining movie. It just felt like more could have been done. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point, the part where we get into, you know, how you edit a film and some of the scenes that get cut that kind of tie things up together. I mean, there's a lot of action in this movie. I don't know if I didn't mind the globetrotting that much. I think that is part of Bond. Like, for example, I mean, From Russia with Love is my favorite Sean Connery movie, and there's a lot of globetrotting in it. You know, and I'm
not
personally
saying you can't have that. I just thought they could have sacrificed a little bit of it for a little bit more character exposition. That's all.
Well, no, and that's part of what I'm getting at. A few more scenes, 10 extra minutes in the film. You know, showing a little bit more of David Bastide's character, yes, and him having more than just one line is absolutely. You've said of this film. Oh, go ahead.
That didn't really bother me though, because I felt like that was kind of in the vein of somebody like an Odd Job or Jaws, who really didn't have any speaking parts in those films. So I feel like they were sort of bringing back the old classic, you know, physical villains where we see nothing about mental villains.
And I understand where you're coming from that, Alex. It's just that's not how the character was marketed. So it really threw me off.
And that was the part of it I didn't see. So,
you know, there's another thing too. Is the first movie we've seen David Bautista in is, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's hilarious in the film as, you know, someone who doesn't understand metaphor. So I think you're kind of expecting these funny, you know, one-liners by him, and stuff. But you know, he's the Brute. He's the anti-Bond. But the action sequences were great. I mean, it was one of the best car chases they've ever had in a Bond film, and stuff. And I love, you know, they talked about this film having a little bit more humor to it you're still going to have a dark and a gritty character, but you're going to add a few more, some more one-liners, make it humorous, and the whole car chase and him looking at the buttons and things not working, and then having the conversation with Moneypenny on the phone, and getting that disdain in his voice, like, who is that? This is a guest. At this time of night, it's called having a life, Bond. They did do their job with that, and it did make. They didn't go so overboard that you felt like you were watching a Roger Moore, James Bond, but it made it a little. Daniel Craig's Bond wasn't such a brute, even though he kind of is, and whatnot. But like I said, from the character development, yes, you could have had a couple more scenes with Christopher Waltz's character. With Franz, but the way they introduced him in that whole everything in the shadows when they're doing their meeting and he knows that Bond is there, that was brilliant. That I thought was a great, and just the slow pacing of leading everything up to him, and you still don't even see his face, and you hear his voice, and very menacing and all of that. But really, that was kind of the best scene until you get to him at the end when he has his scar. Everything else he was just kind of. I felt like I was watching. Go ahead.
That part was nice. How they come back full circle and you get to see how Blofeld gets his scar.
Right. So, but there's some moments in there you feel like you're going to start getting Christopher Waltz again and regurgitating his character from Inglourious Bastards and just talking way too much, and that's not what Blofeld does. But I'm in agreement with you about Monica Bellucci. If there are some scenes out there that you cut with her, shame on you.
And she just kind of disappeared from the story. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
there and then she was gone forever. So
don't get me wrong. I mean, we all want to be able to seduce Monica Bellucci the way he did it, and that was a fun scene. But at the same time, it's like I know that Lee Sedol, or if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she's the main Bond girl, and she's gorgeous and all that. But I want Monica Bellucci a little bit more. I'm just saying. You can have the young girl later.
Felix Leiter, and then they mentioned Felix Leiter, but you never get to see him. I was like, that's kind of easy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, here's an interesting note about James Bond too. You get different characters playing. Felix Leiter in the older movies. Okay, I mean there was numerous characters. There was never really the same character twice in each movie.
There was
like
only
they always
one guy. No, there was one guy who played it twice, and that was it.
Right. Then there's two trivia questions for you, Bond fans. Who's the one guy that actually played him twice, and who was the one guy that played him first, who was famous by a 60s TV show that has the coolest song, other than Airwolf. No, cooler than Airwolf for the theme song. And no shouting it out, Alex.
Yeah, I promise. Yeah, never again.
Okay, all right. But Jeffrey Wright is a great Felix Leiter, and to mention him here and not have him come back, come on. You could have had him in for at least one scene. He's done shooting all of his scenes for Mockingjay Part 2. I mean, again, there's probably a scene in there, and it just got deleted because of all the action stuff. But one of the other things I really love Ralph Fiennes is at playing M. Just some of the snarkiness in his tone very much reminds me of Bernard Lee from the Sean Connery movies. Mm-hmm. He's serious, but he's very sarcastic. He knows Bond by heart and can make these little dark jokes and stuff. But at the same time, it's great to see him with a gun and know that he's not a bureaucrat, as I talked about in Skyfall, that he can actually shoot. And they're all in this together and stuff. and you definitely get to see that trust between them both, really develop in this movie. I mean, in fact, that whole team, by the end and stuff, they did a lot of great things, and for introducing Spectre, because they're not dead. They didn't kill Blofeld at the end. So he's definitely coming back to be able to.
You got a whole meeting full of agents that they didn't kill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, you set it up to be able to fight Spectre and all, but the way they just did it, and at the very end, and being able to stop, Big Brother really coming online, and little too person of interest for me, but still, that's part of the storyline, and with the modern technology that we have now, is being able to literally monitor everything. But the Orwellian jokes were absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, and then I also liked how they, when M was talking to C about the decision to kill and the decision not to kill,
right.
And then at the end of the movie, of course, Bond doesn't kill Blofeld because he's a better intelligence asset alive.
Well, I always talk about that Quantum of Solace is very much a 90-minute epilogue of Casino Royale, because it picks right up afterwards, and it just kind of ties all the loose ends, but it takes way too long doing it. And, the pacing, it's all over the place, and that's why it's the worst of the Daniel Craig movies. This movie, in a lot of ways, is kind of the same thing, but yet it does have its own individual story that's very good in introducing the real organization that has connected everybody,
Well, I think because it's more of a sequel to Skyfall rather than an epilogue.
Right, exactly, and thank you. But one of the things, and you talk about, not killing him, that whole line when he first meets Q in the museum, knowing when not to pull the trigger, okay?
Yeah.
That is something that machines and all that is why you train double O's, because they have to make those decisions, okay? And you can't, it has to be a human decision. It cannot be left up to a machine to make those kind of decisions. So they did a lot of things right with this movie. But, I think, as we've mentioned before, there's some scenes in there that I think got deleted that I think should have probably been left in. And I wouldn't be upset.
I'm interested to see a director's cut. I would like to see a full director's cut.
If there's a director's cut that's nearly 3 hours long, I'm fine with that, to see this movie, to watch this. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I'm saying yes. If it's 3 hours long, I don't care. I don't care if it's 3 hours and 15 minutes long, especially on DVD or Blu-ray, because, hey, you know what the great thing about that is? Pause button.
Exactly. Great example when you talk about director's cuts of movies and stuff, and this is why I think people should never, you should just let Ridley Scott do what he wants to do when it comes to his movies. Kingdom of Heaven. I think a lot of people criticized, the theatrical version for being too long, but not having things that, scenes that tied into other scenes very well. It was kind of choppy. But you watch the director's cut, which is about 4 hours long, and you realize, oh, wait, look at this magnificent story and how it flows well, with each scene into each other. And, I mean, that's the only version that I will watch when I watch that movie.
Well, that happened to him with that happened to him with Blade Runner, too. I mean, Blade Runner was panned when it first came out.
Right.
But the definitive director's cut is an absolute cult classic. It's one of the hardest DVDs to get a hold of.
Right.
So.
But, it's an interesting question about a James Bond film. Can you actually have a 3-hour James Bond film and people be okay with it? So,
look, I say this. If the story is good and it's well paced, because there are 2-hour movies that are just drawn out and they're not well edited, they're not well cut, and you just feel like you've been in the damn theater forever. But then there are 3-hour movies where you're like, man, it's over already? That was awesome. So, if you've got a well-written story that moves along, I think, for the right script and the right director, a 3-hour Bond is fine. I've got no problems with that.
And I think Sam Mendes is that kind of director. I think what he has done with both of these films has been magnificent. I know he won't direct another one. He's said he's pretty much done, which I think is sad. But then again,
well, Craig did too. But and now it looks like he's coming back for number 5. So
yeah, I think that's just blowing. I think that's just blowing smoke up in an interview. Like, hey, I'm burnt out. I'm tired, and I don't want to do this interview. So I'm gonna say some shocking.
Yeah, how many times did Roger Moore say he wasn't coming back before he didn't come back?
I think after every movie.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the first one.
I think he was slated to actually do. I think he was slated to do about 3, and then he just kept coming back. And then he also said that with a view to a kill. He only came back for that one for the money because he didn't know if he'd ever be able to work again because he was old.
Yeah. And he was, I think, 57 years old when he did that movie. So I mean,
yeah.
It was pretty noticeable at that point.
He was old enough to be Goodnight's dad.
Yeah, he was older than her mother, which he said that kind of out. So.
Well, one they've talked about the opening scene of Spectre and everything they put into it, and even adding more money to the budget. And I want to say bravo, because that was a great scene. I honestly didn't know it was actually Bond underneath the mask, the way they were following in the camera action and all that in the crowd. It was not shaky. They drew you into it. I mean, it was perfect.
They let the background provide the movement. They didn't do that shaky cam nonsense that I hate, and screw you, Blair Witch Project, for even bringing it into our consciousness. To this day, I still haven't seen that other one. What the hell was it called? By the monster one.
You talking about Cloverfield?
JJ? Cloverfield.
That was okay.
I refused
It wasn't that bad.
I just can't. I can't handle it.
You say potato, I say potato.
Yeah, I can't handle it. That stuff drives me nuts. I don't do shaky cam. So I thought that was great. They kept the camera level, but fluid, and then they let the background and the pageantry and the parade and all of that provide the movement and provide the obscurity they needed for the shot. And I thought that was really well done.
My only complaint is this. Okay. My only complaint. Daniel Craig, I know you look cool in your suit and all that, and that's how you're portraying Bond. It's okay to unbutton your sport coat jacket. You don't have to keep it buttoned all the time. Maybe that's a very British thing to do, but it just looks ridiculous. He's having it buttoned, and doesn't seem like he can move around as he's running after a building's about to crash down on him. But then again, sliding down or falling down onto a couch that came out of the hotel, that was actually kind of funny, and then straightening up his tie. Just the whole flow of that scene. It's a great way. All right, so before we get to the second half of the show, yes, we are going to talk about James Bond theme songs. Okay, and we're gonna start off by basically ridiculing Sam Smith. To paraphrase
from the Arrow, Sam Smith, you have failed this franchise.
Yeah,
Holy crap,
we thought
terrible.
There's still been worse though, unfortunately.
There is, and we thought it'd be fun to actually rate all of the James Bond theme songs. So 4 of us, me and Alex and Sheila and Miss Fraser, we all combined our own list and did a blog, and you can go onto our website and check it out. And we're all we're all different in our tastes. But there's there's one commonality that we all had. Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall was pretty much down at the bottom. And really, I think we all pretty much rated Lulu's The Man with the Golden Gun as the worst one, but Sam Smith was not far up from that at all. I think it's a sacred thing to get the theme song right. I get that you have music that, you know, from that generation, you know, like you had more Croner stuff from in the 60s. You had 80s pop and whatnot, you know, and for the 80s. You know, that's another reason somebody like Duran Duran would do a James Bond song, but you have to you have to get an artist and a song that really fits the mood that you're trying to do. Okay, Adele's Skyfall was perfect for Skyfall.
Mm-hmm.
She has an amazing voice. It was dark.
And it was very somber.
Yeah, it had a great nostalgia quality. They captured just the right sound. You could hear bits and pieces of the original theme in it. It was perfect for the anniversary of the film, and that's why I had to put it up towards the top.
Well,
it's the only one to ever win an Academy Award for Best Song, so I thought that was important. Yeah,
and I think that is, it's one of those times where the Academy actually gets it right on things. But, I mean, it's definitely in my top 10 of songs. I think I think it's number 4 for me. I mean, View to a Kill is always going to be a little higher because it's Duran Duran and, you know, growing up in the 80s. But Adele is right up there. So I understand you're trying to capture that again and be a little bit more somber. But Sam Smith, really? The guy sucks. Okay?
I'm sorry. That chorus, oh, my God. And my wife and I, our ears were bleeding. Who the fuck thought it was a good idea to get the seagull from Little Mermaid to sing a song for James Bond?
Just way too much. What is that called?
Way too much falsetto.
The Barry Manilow. Yeah, way too much falsetto. The Barry Manilow effect.
It was terrible. I would have rather listened to Christopher Walken speak it. Just speak the lyrics. It would have been more entertaining.
You might as well just
writing,
you know,
on the walls.
Yeah, right. So
on the wall.
There's only like 3 movies where I will fast forward through the theme, you know, when I'm rewatching a Bond film, and that's definitely going to be one of the 3 from now on. I can't. The Man with the Golden Gun is. I won't listen to that piece of shit of a song
either. That was pretty bad too.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad. That whole film was bad though.
But I was looking over your guys' list, and I noticed something. And it's not true with all of them, but for most of them, if the song doesn't have the title of the movie as the title of the song, it's generally shite. The only one that I really thought bucked the trend was Casino Royale with "You Know My Name" by Chris Cornell.
Right.
What about Nobody Does It Better?
See, I actually think that's one of the better songs. That's like my number 2. I'm not a fan of Carly Simon, but I just thought that worked for Roger Moore's film.
I just felt like that was so, like, looking back, it's so iconic to the Bond series in terms of the song.
Yeah, but much like the one with Chris Cornell, it fit Bond because it was talking about Bond. It wasn't the title of the movie, but Nobody Does It Better was specifically about Bond. And much like You Know My Name, I thought that fit Casino Royale because it was Bond's relaunch and, you know, who's this guy? Well, you know my name, and if you don't, you soon will, you know, kind of deal.
Well,
so
also look at the time that music comes out, okay? That soft, easy listening 70s stuff, you know, really fit perfect with the type of James Bond movies that Roger Moore was doing. Chris Cornell's, you know my name. It's hard edged. It's edgy, and it really fits the new Bond that you're doing. Okay, so I mean it's perfect for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the Quantum of Solace song, I think we just really took that a little bit. Yeah, we took that a little too far. It's not a very good song.
To me, it just doesn't sound like a song. It's just a lot of noises and just saying boom, boom, bang, bang. I was like, what is this crap? What were they thinking when they wrote this? I mean,
I had forgotten about it. It's so forgettable. I had forgotten it. I had to actually watch the YouTube video on your guys' blog post because I was like, what the hell was the song for that? And
you know what?
I watched it and I was like, I really must have hated it this much because I don't remember ever listening to it in the theater, and I know I saw it in the theater, so I must have blocked it out of my memory.
You know what they were thinking? It doesn't matter if we have a good song in this movie at all. One day we're going to be able to get Sam Smith, and he's going to write a great song. And then they realize, well, we just fucked up twice.
Yeah, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for him.
Yeah, it's not even that the lyrics and all of that about the writing on the wall, which, I mean, I get the metaphor. I do, especially when they're in the old building of MI6 and his name is spray painted on the wall of agents who lose their lives.
That was a punch on the nose.
Yeah,
that was a punch on the nose.
Right.
And I loved what they did with the title sequence. I thought it was reminiscent of what they did with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where you're seeing old memories of the Bond, and you've got the octopus. So when you think of Octopussy, I mean, there were things about it that I really liked. I just wish it had a better song.
Well, you know what? Honest to God, I would have been okay with the song if you just had Adele sing it again. It would have been okay.
Make sure to the new show is really Basti. That would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because I had to go back and look at the lyrics because Marcus said that to me in the pub. He says, the lyrics aren't that bad, and I was like, gee, I couldn't really tell because my ears were bleeding. So I went back and I looked at the actual lyrics. I didn't listen to the song again because I didn't want to have an aneurysm. But I didn't want to tempt fate. But you're right, the lyrics aren't terrible. But damn that performance. Oy.
No. And I really hope that Sam Smith fades into obscurity after this, and it ruins his career because, again, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have a sacred duty to have a good song and sing well, and you just didn't live up to that. Now, I've listened to some other things by Sam Smith because I didn't really know who he was, and I'm not a 15-year-old girl, so it's not really the kind of music I listen to. And he's horrible. He's horrible on all fronts. I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, just when you think music can't get any worse, they just take. It's like you've been flushed down the toilet and you're just going further and further down the pipe.
You know what would have been better? One of the actors on Saturday Night Live, I think last year they spoofed Sam Smith a couple of times singing Christmas carols. He would have been better spoofing the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how bad it was.
They might as well have gotten Chris Cross to sing the song or something.
Right.
That would have been the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, Spectre was a good movie.
This is the last thing I'm going to say about that song. To quote Andrew Dice Clay, I've heard cats fuck with more harmony.
Oh Lord, yeah. Really, if you have to look at the entire movie as a whole, the worst part about the movie was the song. I probably would have rated the movie a 9 if it hadn't been for that song. I wouldn't have, but still.
Here's
that's
the thing. When I heard the music pick up, towards the end of the opening scene, I thought, and I had already thought about this before I saw the movie. If you're going to make music that sounds like one of the old Bond songs, don't pick a bad one. Because to me, the music sounded like The World Is Not Enough from Garbage, which I rated pretty low on my list. I thought, Sam Smith said his favorite Bond song was Diamonds Are Forever. Why couldn't you base your song off of that one instead of something that sounds like The World Is Not Enough?
Because that is actually a good song. That is actually one of the good ones. Now, the only comment I'm going to make in response to Brendan talking about the ones that aren't titled, the movie or whatever being shot, I disagree with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Despite George Lazenby not being a great Bond, I don't think he's a horrible Bond. I actually like him better than Roger Moore, and I didn't think the movie was bad at all. It was it's very true to the book, and it's a very sad, story. But, Louis Armstrong singing that kind of love song and everything, they didn't actually have Louis Armstrong singing during the sequence and stuff, but the actual song I thought is, very, very pretty, and it's not as bad compared to the other ones. in my mind.
No, I think that's also one of the great Bond songs because it was one of the last things Louis Armstrong did before he died. And,
right.
You know, his voice is so memorable, just the sound of it, and you can hear the trumpet playing and the trombone in the background. And I thought that song was great, but I wasn't sure whether to include it in the list or not because it wasn't actually part of the title sequence. So I just kind of had it in parentheses because it is still kind of a theme song, even though it was just kind of played in the middle of the movie.
So let me ask this, and since Brendan didn't do a list, like I said, I think the lists are very different based on musical taste. Alex, what? And besides the John Barry Orchestra, you know, James Bond theme song, which is iconic and wonderful and all that, what did you pick to be your number one James Bond song?
I went ahead and went with Nobody Does It Better, not because it was my absolute favorite, but because I feel like it has to be, along with Goldfinger, among the two most iconic theme songs throughout the history of the Bond franchise. And just, I don't know, just something about the music and the way, not just the song itself, but the way they used the theme of that song throughout the movie. I thought that the overall music for that entire film was one of the best scores, and it actually wasn't a John Barry score. It was one of the few Bond films of that era that was not John Barry, but just the use of the music from that song, not just during the title sequence, but the way it was used throughout the movie, I thought was just very well done. And there is sort of a romantic element to the film, besides being, you know, one of the classic Bond films, action-wise, character-wise, and everything else. To me, that there's just certain elements that make the song so iconic. And so, with that in mind, I just felt like it had to be up at the top. It was well received when it came out, and on top of that, it still holds up to me. It doesn't sound outdated like some of the other songs do. It's one of those where when I hear it, I still remember it and I still recognize it as being the great Bond song that it was. So,
right, Brendan, what would you actually say is the best James Bond theme song out there, since you didn't do a list?
Well, my personal favorite is always going to be Duran Duran, A View to a Kill. When that song comes on the radio, and it still does on occasion, I have to stop. Right. But some of the other ones that I really do like, of course, you know, you can't go wrong with Live and Let Die. I mean, it's Paul McCartney.
Sure.
You know, Skyfall. I love Nancy Sinatra. I had a crush on Nancy Sinatra when I was a kid, and they used to play her videos on VH1. So, so You Only Live Twice has got to be up there. You know, I'm a real big fan of Chris Cornell as a guitarist and a songwriter, so You Know My Name has got to be on there as well for me, if the top lists. So yeah, that's probably where I'd go.
Yeah, well, you know, here's the thing. I'm always, my favorite song is always going to be For Your Eyes Only. I think it's probably the one great hit that Sheena Easton ever did, and I think it actually kind of, again, it fits the James Bond and the James Bond movie that it goes with, you know. I actually like For Your Eyes Only. It's one of my favorite Bond films.
We're totally agreement there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's not really dark. It's just kind of, and it's such a great metaphor about, you know, being a secret agent, you know, For Your Eyes Only. And of course, you know, you see the folder when it's handed to him in M's office and stuff, you know, which has the little ribbon around it, For Your Eyes Only. To me, that song, I mean, that's one of those songs that I could actually put like on a playlist and, you know, enjoy as something nostalgic from the 80s. And I think that's something about the James Bond theme songs is, can you listen to this song outside of the James Bond movie? Does it resonate, you know, outside and stuff? Now, my cousin was actually giving me shit. He came to I got to treat him this week for an adult night out. From his wife and two kids. And he was giving me shit about the list that I made and telling me that I brought shame to our family for not having Chris Cornell's song higher than GoldenEye by Tina Turner. And I had to explain, I'm like, look, it's not that I don't like Chris Cornell, and I'm sure that song should probably be higher. But again, Tina Turner's GoldenEye is another shining example of, I thought it fit perfect for that movie. Okay? And Tina Turner, you know, still had great legs back then, and just the whole sequence worked perfect for that movie GoldenEye. But A View to a Kill is going to be in my top 5. The Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon again, I think I agree with you, Alex, on that one. The only one that I'm probably a little bit different than everybody else, I think everybody else had this song way down on their list, and mine was a little bit higher, was Madonna's Die Another Day, because it was edgier and more electronic and stuff. But again, I think that's a shining example of finding the perfect song for the Bond movie that you have. And while that movie is not a good movie at all, the fact that he was captured and tortured for a year, and you see the whole torture being, go out throughout the sequence and everything, I think that song fits. Now, Brendan brought this up at the pub the other night, and he's absolutely right. You should have stopped at the song with Madonna. She didn't need a cameo in the movie. It served no purpose whatsoever.
And does anybody really believe she's a world-class fencing instructor?
I mean, well, it's like she was serving the purpose of being like a man-hating lesbian feminist or something. I mean, every line she said during that whole sequence screams, I'm a man-hating lesbian feminist. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but, this is a James Bond film. I just felt like it was another example of something in that film that was just done horribly wrong. So
right. Well, her song "Die Another Day," I could listen to it outside of a Bond movie, and actually, I don't really watch "Die Another Day." I think I've seen it maybe 3 times. I was still in the Army when I first saw it, and it just wasn't really good, and it is what it is, but I rate it a little bit higher than everybody else on my list of when it comes to music. And I will say one more thing, and then we'll move on to other parts of Bond. I don't understand why everybody rates Goldfinger so high as a song. I love the movie. It's probably the most iconic Sean Connery movie, but I don't understand why the song is so good. She kind of screams in there, and it's annoying.
Well, it's one of those things where if I had to go just based on how much I like the song, it would be a lot lower for me. But because I'm paying respect to how well it was received at the time and what it meant for the Bond series, setting the benchmark for, vocals and just having a title song during the sequence, because it was really technically the first one to do it. And Shirley Bassey, of course, went on to do a couple other ones, and Diamonds Are Forever is my favorite one. I think Moonraker is my least favorite one that she did, but
yeah,
I think that's absolutely that song. To me is just is awful. But I feel like I could not leave it out of the top because it's just too memorable and too important for a lot of James Bond fans and people who always rate the Bond films, always rate that movie and the song being so high. And I guess I was just bowing down to tradition, so to speak. And I didn't put it at number 1, but I feel like it had to be in the top, the top 5, top 7, as it were, just because of what it meant for that franchise and sort of setting the bar for years to come.
I get it. Totally get it. But you did bring up one important thing. Moonraker is a horrible song. I think literally the bottom 3 songs are The Man with the Golden Gun, The Writing on the Wall by Sam Smith, and Moonraker. I think those are That's
close to what I had, not quite. I did rate Moonraker ahead of those because I thought even though it's a bad song, at least it had the inclusion of John Barry and Shirley Bassey. And so I felt like, well, at least it sounds like a song even though it's a bad song. The 3 songs I had rated at the bottom were examples of songs that just didn't even sound like songs to me. So that was why I rated, I thought it was kind of funny. My 2 lowest rated songs both had the word die in them. So no offense, I know you like Die Another Day, but I had Die Another Day and Another Way to Die as the 2 lowest, and then of course Man with the Golden Gun rated just above those 2.
Right.
So.
Well, and everybody's different when it comes to the songs.
Sure,
so.
yeah.
All right. moving right along, and see, this is what happens when we start talking about Bond. We can go on forever because it's James Bond. All right, so this is based on a discussion that we've actually, it's been reoccurring over the years, and this is part of what Alex and I have talked about at the local pub after doing movie screenings. Who are the best of the Bonds? Okay. Now, with that being said, we pretty much all agree that Sean Connery's kind of the best because he's the original, right? Am I wrong about that?
Well, not just because he's the original. There's a lot of people are the original. That doesn't mean they're the best. It's something. I think he's the best not just because he's the original, but because he set such a high standard for the role.
Right.
And he was the embodiment of the character.
He was actually approved by Ian Fleming, and Ian Fleming liked him so much that when he wrote his next book after the first film came out, he rewrote a part of the story where his background was half Scottish, just because.
Right.
Originally he wasn't Scottish, and so they didn't want Sean Connery, but he liked him so much in the movie when he saw Dr. No that he actually rewrote him as being half Scottish. And for a guy to be that impactful to the original author, where he would actually rewrite the character because he liked your performance so much, has to mean something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But so we pretty much agree that Sean Connery is the best James Bond. Okay. So really the next question is, who do we like after that? Who is the worst, and how do we rate them? So I'm actually going to start with you, Alex, because again we've had this conversation. But after Sean Connery, how do you rate the other James Bonds?
Well, oh man, it really, to me, it's being a purist that I consider myself to be. I think I'll always have to go with Timothy Dalton as number 2, just because when I look at the old sketches of James Bond from the novels, he resembles him the most. And the fact that Timothy Dalton was such an avid fan of the books, and he was classically trained in theater, he took the role a lot more seriously than the previous Bonds did in terms of how he was going to play the role. And maybe it didn't work so great in terms of how it would look on film because everybody was so used to him having the plucky one-liners and being a very suave kind of guy. He brought a much darker and grittier and vulnerable side to Bond that I think hadn't been around. And oddly enough, it's sort of been the way Daniel Craig has played it to a lesser extent, and it's been much more acceptable and appealing than it was during Timothy Dalton's day. But I think I'll always have to go with Timothy Dalton as second, and I really wish he had more films because, I think maybe they should have brought him in sooner. Maybe he would have had, the one before Living Daylights. Roger Moore obviously had expired long before he actually should have, So
yeah.
maybe it would have been best if they had brought him in a little bit sooner. But obviously with MGM and Eon Productions, they had all those issues with making the next film, and so that sort of let too much time go by, and so Timothy Dalton couldn't do any more. But I would probably still have to rate him at number 2, just for me personally.
See, and I think that's the thing about it. Nobody ever gives. It seems like most Bond fans don't give Timothy Dalton enough credit, because he was actually one who read the books. He knew that Bond was a darker character. He played him that dark. And I think we were so used to the Roger Moore style, and just people were not ready for it, for that kind of Bond. And it's funny to hear interviews with him and talk about it, because even he admits that, but what's interesting, and this is another thing we've talked about, is how the third James Bond film was the one where whoever's playing Bond really comes into his own. Goldfinger with Sean Connery, Spy Who Loved Me, which is generally considered the best Roger Moore, Skyfall with Daniel Craig. Really, those are the only 3. The best Bond film for Pierce Brosnan was GoldenEye, but GoldenEye was supposed to be the third film for Timothy Dalton. And
that's a great point. I agree with that.
Yeah. So not that Pierce Brosnan wasn't good in it at all. I do very much enjoy that movie, but I think it'd been interesting to see him in that role. It's a good movie for Pierce Brosnan to start off with, too bad he didn't have any other really great movies after that. But think
and
about that
ironically,
move.
it was actually supposed to be Brosnan's third movie too, because he was supposed to be the one that was cast, and Dalton got cast instead because Brosnan couldn't get out of his Remington Steele contract.
But I don't have a problem with that though, because I think Pierce Brosnan was too young. I think they were going to be going too young, and ever since the Timothy Dalton era, they've been consistently going with a man in his late 30s, early 40s, and it just seems like that's the right age to get for the new Bond. So
I don't know how many people actually know this, but when Sean Connery left after You Only Live Twice, before George Lazenby got it, they actually wanted Timothy Dalton to play it because he was. But he turned it down because he thought he was too young to play Bond. He was like only 25 at the time. So Henry Cavill was the second choice before Daniel Craig got it back in 2006, and Henry Cavill would have only been about 24, 25 at the time. So you need a Bond that's a little bit more seasoned, and really if you look at Bond's history, by the time you get to a 00 status, you're really looking at, you're about 30, 31. You've been in the service a while. You've done your training, and the way the history goes is you have a good run of about 10, 15 years as a 00 if you survive, because it's mandatory retirement at 45. That's the way they set it up. But yeah, I agree with you about Timothy Dalton. The movies weren't particularly good.
I think they were Daylight fantastic, but
well, no, I agree. I actually liked the film, but I mean compared to everything else. So, Brendan, how about you? Who is after Sean Connery? Who's the best James Bond?
Well, it's a difficult call for me because I think for me, Sean Connery's clear above everyone else, and then it gets a little bit more jumbled. But I'm actually going to go with Craig. And I would put Craig slightly ahead of Dalton just because he's had a bigger body of work. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna go with Craig slightly ahead of Dalton at number 3. And I think Pierce Brosnan gets completely victimized by terrible script writing. He could have been much. Look how good GoldenEye was. So he could have been, but that opportunity was squandered after GoldenEye. And then, of course, George Lazenby. George Lazenby, I don't even like to include in the list, not because I've got anything against him, but with one film, it's almost like an incomplete.
Right.
Yeah. And the fact,
and On Her Majesty's Secret Service was really meant for Sean Connery.
Yeah.
So
and
that would have been interesting to see. Go ahead.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen Lazenby come back and do Diamonds Are Forever, because it did kind of pick up where the previous film left off, with them trying to get revenge for the man who killed his wife. So it would have been great if he had gotten at least that. But, as I understand it, Lazenby kind of squandered his money and his power from doing the film.
Right.
He was just very sloppy and very immature with how he handled the success. And the fact that he was Australian and not British, I think, bothers me a little bit. And the fact that they had to dub his voice with another actor for a good 1/3 of the film bothers me also. And then just, again, like Brendan was saying, he only did one Bond film. And so I usually just consider that as being part of the Sean Connery era. And for the hiccup where he just wasn't there, basically.
Well, it's such a shame that that's the movie that he did, because On Her Majesty's Secret Service is literally one of the best stories. It's probably one of the top 3 stories. It's a very sad, romantic, and tragic. And then, like you said, Diamonds Are Forever picks right back up with him trying to seek revenge. Before we start closing the show out, I will agree that I think Daniel Craig has surpassed everybody else to be the number 2 Bond. I mean, I wasn't sure about Craig. Like most people, I didn't think it was going to work when they did, and then I saw Casino Royale, and I was like, well, I'm sold immediately. And then, Quantum of Solace didn't faze me anyway, in any way thinking that he wasn't. But Skyfall just pretty much cemented him as being a great, great James Bond. And I think it'd be sad if he only did 4. Maybe 5 is good enough. Maybe you do 5 James Bonds and then you should retire, and let somebody else come in and do it. 7's probably way too long, especially if you're going to space them, 3 years out from one another. It's not like the old days where you can film one every year with Sean Connery. So I would say about 5 is really what you do. If you're going to get an actor that's, in his late 30s. And even Daniel Craig is going to get to the point where, he's getting too old and stuff like that. So by the time they come out with another one, he'll be pretty much 50 anyway.
Well, see, I think they're at that point now because of all the gaps between these films that I think they should go to a different direction because, we need somebody represented from the 1970s. The trend has been somebody from each decade is represented as Bond. If they go too much longer with Daniel Craig, they're just going to have to skip the generation of the 70s and go with somebody from the 80s. So
Right. Well, the only reason I want him to continue and do one more is you've set Spectre up, okay, and I'd like for him to, come back and do it and have one more crack at it. But then again, you've left it perfect if he doesn't come back, where there's a new threat and you've basically replaced the Bond and stuff like that. But it's about who you really get at that time. And speaking about if Daniel Craig doesn't come back, I have nothing against Idris Elba. I think he's a wonderful, wonderful actor. I don't personally want to see him as a James Bond. I don't mind seeing him as a 00 agent, but I think you need to keep the tradition of a Scottish, someone who's more Scottish and can put that into his James Bond. And Idris, being African American, I just don't think can really pull that off. But I think he would make a great double agent. Like if you had a double agent who went rogue and joined Spectre, and 007 had to go and hunt him down, I could certainly see that. But real quick, out of everybody that's out there, do you guys have someone that you would definitely like to see?
Absolutely.
Who would you like?
I have one too, but
I have been talking about it to as many people as possible just over the last 3 or 4 years, and I would love to see Michael Fassbender play the next James Bond.
That's amazing that you said that because I was just talking to my friend on Facebook from back home in Rhode Island, and I was saying that the Assassin's Creed movie is going to be his James Bond audition.
Yeah.
You're right. He's just the right age. He's 38,
yep.
So he's getting right to the right age to do it. And I think he's got the right look, and he's got the right style, and he's a great actor.
Yep.
You know what? Wow. I didn't even that wasn't on my list at all, but I'm sold. You guys are absolutely right. There is no logical debate I can have against that.
Yeah, everybody's talking about, there should be Idris Elba or Henry Cavill, but Henry Cavill just did The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and he's going to be caught up in D.C. for the next 10 years. So if he does Bond 2, all he's going to do for the next 10 years is Superman and Bond. He's going to have no time to do anything else. So I don't think he would want to do it.
Now, we were talking about it the other night. I think Damian Lewis would make a great choice for Bond. But the point is he's getting up there in age too, because I think he's 44, 45. So relatively, you could only do maybe 2 or 3 before you'd be too old. So Fassbender really is the right age and has the right look, and there's some very suave moments that he has in the X-Men movies. That
it was
really
that
does.
Scene in the bar. Yeah, the scene in the bar where he kills all the men in the bar and he has the gun and he's doing the mind manipulation. That scene, when I saw that scene, I thought that guy's got to be my pick for the next Bond. As soon as I saw that scene, I was sold.
Yeah. Well, I guess we will see. If nothing else, we can start the campaign now. We want Michael Fassbender to be the next James Bond. And no Sam Smith to do the song. Sam Smith, You're done. The fans have spoken. we have a ruling here on that Nerd Show. You suck. Don't ever do another James Bond song.
Let's get somebody a little bit older to do a James Bond song. We get all these young people doing it. Let's do somebody a little bit older for once.
There you go. All right. We got about a minute left, so we're going to close this show out. We will be back next week. We're going to be talking about the best shows on the BBC in the last 40 years. Some of our favorites, things that you may not have heard of that you should definitely check out. So you should stick with us for that. And then the week after, we're going to be talking about boxing movies because we're going to be talking about, we're doing our review over the Creed movie, which we're all very much looking forward to as a continuation of Rocky, where he's basically playing the Mickey character. And we got to answer the question, are the Rocky movies really the best boxing movies out there? And how does this movie stand up to it? Everybody, we are about 5 weeks from Star Wars The Force Awakens, so keep being excited and stay nerdy. And we will be back next week. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.